All right, gentlemen, there is a Moon Knight trailer coming tonight.
Yes, sir. Well,
ish.
Tonight for us, not for the people listening, because they already got it.
Yeah.
Because this comes out on Tuesdays.
Well, you guys know what I mean. We'll watch it after we record this. But anyway, BB Nate, it's been said that Moon Knight is the Batman of Marvel. You're the big Batman guy here. You don't know much about Moon Knight, do you?
No, I don't.
All right. So without going into it, when I say Moon Knight is the Batman of Marvel, give me a one-word reaction to that statement.
I guess uncertain.
Okay.
That's a good way of putting it.
All right. Yeah. Samuel the Hutt, what about you? What's your one word response to that?
I would say untrue.
Ooh. Disagreeing with that statement. All right. Well, after looking into the character in preparation for this episode, I'm unexpectedly intrigued to see this series. And I'm the host, so it's my segment. I can use how many words I want. So anyway, we'll talk about all that. Boba Fett and the Supermen of America. This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the Porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that Porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to that.
So how far into season 2 are you guys on Daredevil now?
7. We're about to get to episode 7.
Okay. Yeah. So if you've watched Daredevil and you know where they're at in the show, that's where they're at. I haven't gotten that far into it. Non-spoiler for me, because I may want to watch that sometime. What are you guys thinking about season 2 so far? I finished season 1, but I haven't seen season 2.
People are saying it's like it drags on and isn't interesting. Nathan and I have not gotten any sort of impression like that. It's been episode 4 of season 2 is probably my favorite episode so far.
Wow.
That was great.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really good.
All right. Well, welcome to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. We are the only fan podcast to name a canon Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by Ryan Johnson. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story, it is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we are talking about the hot rod Vespas in chapter 3 of the Book of Boba Fett. We're giving our reaction to season 2 premiere of Superman and Lois and taking a closer look at Moon Knight. I am David. I am the dad.
Hi, Dad. Hi, Dad.
And I am honored. Hello, gentlemen. I'm honored to be joined every week by my 2 amazing sons. Nate, what are you talking about?
Well, Superman and Lois is back, and it is already making some big strides with the twists.
So part of me wants them to say Superman and Lois are back, but it's like Spider-Men versus Spider-Mans. You have to have you okay?
Work. Yeah, no.
That cough got into you?
Yeah, developed some sort of little cough for some reason.
No big deal. The good thing is for all of our listeners, even if it is Omicron, it's not contagious through podcasts.
That's true. So y'all are good.
Exactly. So anyway, I wanted to be Superman and Lois are, but it's Superman and Lois is. Samuel the Hutt, what are you talking about?
Yeah, for some reason, Star Wars fans don't seem to like it when Star Wars does what it does best. So
there's a lot of things that Star Wars fans don't like.
That's true. That's just Star Wars.
That's okay.
And what are you talking about?
I like I said in the teaser, I am absolutely fascinated by Moon Knight after preparing for this segment. Yeah. I'm very excited about it. But before we get to all that, this episode is sponsored by Cufflinks.com. They have over 3,000 items on the website from Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Lord of the Rings, NFL, NCAA, Major League Baseball, NBA, and everything else that you can think of. And we are very honored to be sponsored by this amazing company. Thank you guys for doing that. Please follow the show on whatever podcast app you are listening to us on. If it's your first time, thank you for joining us. We are so excited that you have found Tatooine Sons. We hope that we become a part of your fandom going forward every single week. And if you're a returning listener, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being back, being a part of our family here with it. I am excited about Friday's interview episode. It's a 30 minutes super fast look at the future of Star Wars, especially in 2022 with Mr. Fantha Tracks himself,
Oh, wow.
Marc Newbold. And, you know, I always feel a lot smarter when I talk to somebody on the show that has a British accent. It just makes the show sound so much more
High
intelligent
class.
than it actually is. So thanks for being a part of the show on that. Well, Marc, we're excited to have you on there on Friday. Anyway, let's start talking about what we're going to talk about, and let's talk about what we're talking about.
Use that for the past like 3 weeks.
I know,
now.
but that's kind of like my thing now.
It's good. I like it.
Anyway, yeah.
The third episode of Book of Boba Fett came out, and of course, along with it arose some controversy among Star Wars fandom. We'll talk about how the uproar is wrong and talk about where the show's going and some of the fun moments and Easter eggs in this episode. That's up next.
Be on your guard. There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world.
All right, then, keep your secrets.
Your coming to us is as the footsteps of Doomsday.
There are many magic rings in this world, Bilbo Baggins, and none of them should be used lightly.
After the episode, I think we were all kind of like, we like that character, the Major Domo. For the mayor. We think he's just kind of a fun character.
Yeah, he's like very proper and arrogant at the same time.
Right.
But and then it's in moments you can tell completely terrified of Boba Fett, but he's not going to show it. And so he's just kind of going through this very political. He's a lot
great.
of fun. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's get y'all's rating of this episode on a scale of 1 to 10 Melu runs. I'm not sure. It was a fun episode and definitely the best so far. I have a feeling.
Really? So then you got to give it a rating higher than you've given the other ones.
I'm trying to remember what I gave the other ones. I don't know. I give this one an 8. I really enjoyed it. I had a fun time watching this episode, unlike the other episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed this one. I agree. It's my favorite of the 3, and it needed to move the story forward. It did a little bit, but in the end, it was just felt like Star Wars. It felt like I've seen the image, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni playing with little toys, kind of a thing. It felt like that's what this episode was, which was cool.
I'm pretty sure Jon Favreau actually wrote this episode as well.
Not surprised.
All right, so let's just talk about it right off the bat. The infamous biker gang that has fandom in an uproar. It wouldn't be a new week in Star Wars fandom without some controversy and complaining. So people aren't a fan of, I guess, just how colorful the bikes are and how they do look like Vespas. I didn't make that connection until afterwards, but they are colorful Vespas. But we didn't have any issues when we saw them. We thought it fit.
Thought it was really
just fine.
I loved it.
I had seen a little bit on social media that day about people losing their minds over the Vespas and or the bikes or whatever in the gang and the color specifically about it. And so I went into the episode expecting more than I got. I didn't have a problem with it at all. I expected it to be a lot more controversial with it. And I was like, oh, that's what everybody's getting upset about? What's the big deal? Here you got, you've got Boba Fett, that is wearing greens and oranges and all those colors with it. And at the same time, they get upset because, they've got bright colored. Man, if I was on Tatooine, I'd paint my stuff colorful too. How boring is that planet?
Yeah.
So anyway.
I mean, I can understand how it is off-putting because it is off-putting to see. When I was doing research, when I wanted to make a Mando costume, you always are told to use muted colors because that's the color scheme for Star Wars, which is true, but I still think that this fits well. I read this article in my preparation from Collider, actually, talking about this very specific thing, and they're saying Star Wars is about doing new and different things. That's the whole point. So when Star Wars does, this is an infinite galaxy full of things we haven't seen yet. Why are people getting upset? Because there's a splash of color on the beige background of Tatooine that we've seen so many times now. What were your thoughts when you saw it, Nate?
I loved them. I thought it was a lot of fun. Like I said, this episode just felt more fun than anything. And I think that
was probably a lot of influence from John. If he did actually write this episode, that's probably a lot from him, because he's always just been a fun guy, especially with Star Wars, because he respects it a lot. And so I loved it. It was just, I really enjoyed it. I didn't get where the controversy was coming from, because I thought it was just a really cool idea.
And you thought it was an homage to
American Graffiti.
Yeah.
I thought it really was, because it would make sense. That was George Lucas's first big movie before Star Wars. And it kind of worked too.
Yeah. Well, and then you can't make a statement that the color palette of Star Wars is muted or natural tones, because there's this movie out there called Episode 2, Attack of the Clones on Coruscant, where you have bright yellow hot rods, the actual hot rod from American Graffiti repurposed in that film. Because as what you were saying, BB-8, an homage to American Graffiti and George Lucas's love of racing and hot rods. And so here's the other thing that's really frustrating to me on this side of the fandom. As someone that has, we're in the deep end on Star Wars fandom. We have been since we started this podcast, and we experience all of the feelings that are out there through, or at least I do, through social media a lot more. It bothers me to no end, because, a week ago, people are like, in Dave Filoni we trust. Jon Favreau is going to save Star Wars. We'll get rid of Kathleen Kennedy. And then the same people that they are putting up on this huge platform and pedestal, they're now throwing under the bus because they put some colorful scooters on Tatooine. It's just like, get over it. All right. Enjoy what you got. It's this entitlement mentality that really bothers me. So, and I'm tired today, so I probably should just go ahead and stop the conversation. I'll say it this way. I logged on to Twitter today, and I was on for about 45 seconds, and I literally just said, I just logged on for 45 seconds and remembered why I haven't been on Twitter in days, and submitted it and got off because of this kind of silliness. Yeah. So, you don't have to let your fandom be like this. You can enjoy what's out there. So,
and it's kind of funny the way I wrote this. We're sitting here praising Star Wars and this stuff, and we're about to kind of, at least personally, kind of have a little bit of a dig at this.
Well, no, here's the thing though. You can have opinions about Star Wars. That there are things that you don't have to like about Star Wars. We were critical of some of the things that happened in the first couple of episodes of this series. We were critical of some things that happened in the Bad Batch. We've been critical of Star Wars, but you don't have to be a jerk about it.
Right.
And there's so much of that out there now.
Is. Yeah.
And that's where it's just like, nobody's going to take anybody seriously when they, it's the same thing. If all you say is Star Wars is awesome and you don't have an opinion that's like, I get it. There are people I know on Twitter that love Star Wars and they're never going to say anything negative about it. And I love that. I wish that was part of my experience too. But at the same time, this is how you love Star Wars. If I love something, I'm going to say what I like about it and what I don't always like about it. But at the same time, I'm going to celebrate what I love about it. Yeah. And that's what this is.
But in this episode, well, it seems we've closed the book on Boba's story with the Raiders. We still aren't really getting much by way of a substantial story just yet. All that was really developed in this episode was the fact that the mayor ran away and is in league with the Pikes that we see in the flashbacks. And the Pikes have now sent this large group of members to Tatooine to kind of reclaim things from Boba. But that's really all that happened in this episode, despite 90% of it happening in the modern timeline. Do we still not know the main point of this show existing? What is the point of them making this show?
BB Nate should answer this because he's been bringing it up.
We still don't really. We don't have that answer, and it is frustrating. But now it's not trying to feel like throughout the past 2 episodes. It always felt like it was super serious and trying to lead somewhere. This episode felt fun and it felt like Star Wars. So it was good enough for me to not have that answer. Do I still want that answer? Yes. I think we need to get that answer sooner rather than later. But if this is what the series is trying to go for, that more fun, side of Boba Fett and just like what Star Wars has kind of always felt like for me. I feel like it'll be better than the past 2 episodes that we got, because the past 2 episodes were really like episode
the ones
2,
before 1 and 2.
Yeah,
right?
episode 2 was really deep, and we had like the last 10 minutes had no dialogue, and it was a bunch of rituals and stuff with the Tusken Raiders. It felt very off. I liked seeing that side of the Tusken Raiders, but just it felt strange. This felt like a fun little Star Wars ride that we don't go on all that often.
I still don't think we know the villains, obviously, of this show. I think that they're revealing bits and pieces of it. This episode 2, you start to have this feeling that there's something going on with the mayor and the Hutts and those cartels. But now this one, it moves to the mayor's actually in league with the Pikes. And I do think that opens up the door still a lot to this, because BB Nate, I think you even mentioned it after the episode in Solo, a Star Wars story. Dragon Voss and Crimson Dawn are in an alliance. They're with the Pike syndicates, and that's brought up. And so I think that this is bringing in what we ultimately hope this show goes towards, which is bringing in Kira and Crimson Dawn and making them the big bad guys that are outside of this. And I still think that that's what's happening with it. I just feel like they struggle because they're wanting to hold back. It's almost like they're waiting to reveal the villain for this big moment later on, kind of a Kingpin moment from Hawkeye. Right. I just don't think it's working as well.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not working as well because they've been better about keeping the spoilers out, because the Kingpin spoilers were there.
Oh yeah.
So you could sort of knew it was going to Kingpin. We don't really know that this is going
and it still
towards
could
Crimson
be
Dawn.
That's not happening.
Exactly.
Too.
And so I think that may be throwing this off a little bit. But.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into some fun moments and Easter eggs that were in this episode. One thing this show has been doing pretty consistently so far is throwing in fun little Easter eggs for the fans. The first one, we all noticed it, was Danny Trejo.
Of course.
I'm saying his last name, right?
Yeah.
Trejo. Yeah. He's in every Robert Rodriguez film. It's kind of like his little thing. So it was fun to have him in there as that kind of Rancor trainer. And then there was the Rancor that showed up too, which was huge. No pun intended there. But it was cool when they were talking about it with him with Boba Fett. And they mentioned the Witches of Dathomir.
Yeah, they mentioned a lot of that.
And Boba said he had ridden creatures 10 times the Rancor's size. I didn't make this connection until I was researching later, but did y'all make the connection with the holiday special? Remember in the holiday special when we first are introduced to Boba Fett, he's on that big like Stegosaurus.
Oh, yeah.
The dinosaur thing in the animation.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
that's pretty cool. So that's a pretty good deep dive.
That is.
Yeah. So that was fun. And then this one was kind of cool because I'm a huge fan of Ralph McQuarrie's art. When they're driving through in that chase, they run through a picture of Jabba the Hutt, right? That painting of Jabba is actually one of Ralph McQuarrie's concept arts for
so cool.
Return of the Jedi that they threw in there, which I love that. And then, of course, the Maylurons. We all
Star
all
Wars
three
Rebels
of us
moment for us right there. That was awesome.
But yeah, and then this isn't necessarily an Easter egg, but this was a fun moment. You really seemed to like this
moment.
The opening, well, not quite the opening, but Boba's sitting there in the back of the tank taking a bit of a nap, and then he's rudely awakened by the Black Chrysanthemum. What were your thoughts on that, specifically towards the end of that fight?
Well, no, the fight, to have a Wookiee having a fight with 2 Gamorrean guards in that was just, what year did Return of the Jedi come out? 83, I think. I'm 8 years old. I'm in my backyard with Marvin and Brandy and Jamie, and we are playing with the Return of the Jedi set and Chewbacca and the Gamorrean Guard action figures and everything else. It felt like that, and that was super fun for me. But I want to back up. Can we talk a little bit more about the Danny Trejo and the Rancor thing? Because there's a lot of dialogue from the Danny Trejo character in this, where he's talking about the Rancors misunderstood and they're actually peaceful creatures and all of that. And of course, he's setting up something that's going to happen with Boba Fett later. Boba Fett is the first humanoid being that the Rancors ever seen. They take off the blinders and he whatever he got imprints. Is that the right word? He imprints on the Rancor in that moment, like a parent or whatever. And so there's all of that going on. But it's really cool because Danny Trejo's character always plays the big, rough murderer hacker. I mean, the machete guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this moment where you've got the Rancor and you've got Danny Trejo, and Danny Trejo's not just talking about the Rancor. I think that there's this writing where Danny Trejo is sort of talking about himself with this. Like, there's a softer side that he's actually a really nice guy. And that's what, if you know anything about Danny Trejo, he comes from a really rough background with it. That he sort of turned himself around because of that. And I think that there's some fun stuff in that character with it. So I really liked that moment as well with it. So
that was a good scene.
Yeah.
Well, I think in our opinion, in the eyes of Tatooine Sons, all Star Wars is good Star Wars, and Book of Boba Fett is good Star Wars. We're just highly anticipating to see where this show will go within the next 4 episodes.
Find out tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
That'll be super fun. All right. Good job.
Thank you.
Samuel the Hutt.
Thank you.
I got to figure out where my next segment is. So, okay, I'm just going to have to say this. If you believe everything that you read in the clickbait headlines coming up next, you're going to be waiting for some trailers to drop for Disney Plus series for a very, very long time. Like, never. It's never happening. But that's next on Bad News.
This is not going to go the way you think.
It's a big day for you tomorrow, isn't it, Samuel the Hutt?
Yeah, no pressure.
What's going on with the Launch Society stuff, right?
So, yeah, one of the sub-team leads had to back out because he's got a previous engagement, and he asked me to cover for him. I'm not a lead. I am.
So what you're presenting your Launch Society project or something?
Yeah, our last paper, our last report, we submitted to NASA, and now we are doing a presentation where they can ask us questions about the design of our rocket and stuff. And I have to be one of the people actually talking there. I was going to go anyway and sit in the back before.
But now you're presenting.
Now I'm presenting.
So obviously you got to look like a sharp-dressed young man.
Yes, suit and tie, the whole 9 yards.
The whole 9, suit and everything?
Yes.
All right. Is there going to be some cufflinks.com?
Absolutely. I already talked to Mom. I'm like, I'm wearing the Star Wars tie, the tie clip, the whole 9 yards. If I had my French cuff shirt clean, I would totally be wearing that with some cufflinks too.
Dry cleaning bad moment. So,
yeah.
All right, BB Nate, did you wore some cufflinks.com yesterday to church?
Did I? Yes.
Yeah, you did. You were like,
I was
BB-8'd all the way.
BB-8 all.
No cufflinks though.
No cufflinks because the shirt.
But you the tie bar,
all that stuff. Yeah.
We absolutely love it. I didn't get a chance to wear any of it yesterday because I didn't have my stuff clean. But that's actually in the dry cleaning, so it's coming next week.
All right, good.
But yeah, we just need to go in and continue to see. I wonder if they're going to have any Moon Knight.
Ooh,
I need to see about that. They've got a lot of other stuff though. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they've got like over 3,000 items on their website. Not just with cufflinks, but ties and tie bars and socks and money clips and all sorts of other great gifts on there.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So you can use code Tatooine15 at checkout to receive 15% off everything on the site with no minimum order required.
Yeah,
that's a good deal.
It's an awesome deal. Head on over to cufflinks.com today and remember to use the code Tatooine15 at checkout.
Well, you want the bad news? Or the really bad news?
All right, headline 1. New Han Solo and Chewbacca series confirmed by Star Wars.
Whoa.
I know. We've gone down this path before on bad news, but this article from Epic Stream is such a textbook example of this clickbait tactic. I couldn't pass it up. The headline is perfectly ambiguous. It really doesn't go into any details. And then next it uses photos to illustrate the article that are all photos of Han Solo and Chewbacca from The Force Awakens. So this makes the reader immediately assume that the article is about some live action series coming to Disney Plus. It's not. It's about a new, exciting new comic book series. It sounds great. It's going to tell stories between the period between the Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. So it's really pretty cool. But the headline is very deceptive and misleading. And so that is why it is getting a clickbait level of 8.
And they really like that tactic, don't they?
Oh, yeah. It'll come back and bite them here in a second. Or someone else, actually.
Marvel rumored to recast Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man with Tom Cruise. Of course, you gave me this headline.
Of course I did, yeah.
Inside the Magic is sourcing this rumor from a Twitter user who goes by the username Rahal Arts. Rahal Arts is actually a fan artist who made an image of Tom Cruise in the iconic Iron Man suit because he heard some rumors about Tom Cruise playing a variant of Tony Stark in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. It's a random Twitter user and some fan art. There's literally no story here. This gets a clickbait level 9. I'm giving it a 10 for the disrespect on Robert Downey Jr. Just saying.
All right.
Yes. Well, Marvel announces plans to restart the Amazing Spider-Man series.
Whoa.
Yeah. Inside the Magic is taking the same tactic that you talked about with Han and Chewie earlier, Dad. They're using photos of Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man to report on the relaunch of the classic Marvel comic book series, The Amazing Spider-Man. This one might be even worse than the Han and Chewie story because the Amazing Spider-Man comic series isn't even about the same version of Spider-Man as the one in the movie universe called by the same name. This gets a clickbait level of 10.
Yikes.
And rightfully so. Yes. All right. Well, when we planned out this episode, we did it on the hunch that Moon Knight would start getting some marketing soon, and we wanted to be ready for that conversation. At the time, though, we had no clue that the first full trailer would be scheduled to release about an hour after we finish this recording. So let's talk about Moon Knight.
Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
If you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different people.
Dad, you were coming to me and you're like, man, Moon Knight is fascinating. I'm like, I know. Right after our trip to California, I decided to start reading the wiki on Moon Knight. And as I was reading it, I'm like,
you've read some of the
a little bit,
fandom or whatever,
or the fandom wiki on his character is super, super interesting.
Well, that's kind of where I was going to start with this. So I'll start with BB Nate before I get to you, Sam.
Okay.
What do you know about Moon Knight so far, BB Nate?
I know nothing, really. Not that much at all. Kind of just Dr. Fate mixed with Batman is kind of the vibe I get.
All right, so help the uninitiated on this end about Dr. Fate.
Dr. Fate is a person who takes powers a lot from Egyptian mythology.
Okay.
So that ties into that, and then just Batman.
And basically, like, there's that helmet that this god lives in that transfers from person to person and gives them their powers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of similar. I could see where you made that connection with Moon Knight.
All right, very cool. And what about you as far as what do you know so far?
So from what I can,
getting into a lot of details because you're probably going to steal some of my stuff.
But from what I can remember, he's just he was a mercenary or a soldier of some sort, and he gained these powers from an Egyptian god or whatever, and his powers are based on the cycle of the moon or whatever. And during a full moon, he's more powerful, something to that effect. Okay. But as to a lot of specifics, I don't remember.
Okay. Well, I mean, the official Marvel description, if you go to marvel.com, there's just a little, like a teaser description of who the character is struggling with multiple personalities and amoral inclinations. Marc Spector fights on against all odds as the cloaked Avenger Moon Knight. Do you guys know what amoral means?
I thought it was amoral.
It's the same thing. Same tomato, amoral, amoral.
It's like he kind of, I don't know a good way to
without morals.
Yeah.
Like he has
kind of anti-hero.
Yeah, it's very anti. Well, like he has no
code.
Yeah, which is that it is different than
that's
Batman,
very different than Batman.
On that. It's been said, that he is this version of Batman, with it, from that part of it. It makes it really hard to kind of see the comparison.
If you look at Moon Knight, I can see where people are coming from, that it's Marvel's version of Batman. It just looks very similar, but the characters are not the same.
Yeah.
They're very different. Heck, I'd even compare Moon Knight to Spector before I compared him to Batman, honestly.
And who's Spector? For the
Spector is in the comics, God's spirit of vengeance, judgment. So, and he looks exactly
in
like
DC,
Moon Knight,
right?
in DC,
Okay.
and he looks exactly like Moon Knight. Honestly, the cloaked hood, the cape, everything.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the similarities between Moon Knight and Batman begin and end with they fight at night.
Yeah.
And use hand-to-hand combat for stuff.
I don't know. I think there may be some other similarities that you guys may not have picked up on.
All right.
We'll talk a little bit about that. He's first of all, let's talk about some of like his skills or his powers, so we are familiar with those things. First of all, he grew up as a trained boxer, so knows how to handle himself in a fight with that. He's a former CIA agent, so he has a lot of tactical and strategic skills based on that. A lot of weapons expertise with it. Fully trained in martial arts. He's an athlete and a gymnast. He speaks multiple languages, and then he gets his superpowers.
Yeah, so he's already pretty qualified.
Exactly. So he's kind of but that's another difference because he does have powers.
He does have powers,
which Batman doesn't. With that, he's got this enhanced strength during nights where there's a full moon, which is kind of like if you're the bad guy and you know that.
Just don't go out on a full moon.
Don't go out on a full moon. Anyway,
it's like, why do bad guys fight at all during night with Batman being
right,
around?
that's true.
So.
Prophetic visions and dreams that he has a lot. He has the ability to drain another person's life energies through physical contact.
I've not heard of that.
With that,
Rogue?
That was one that kind of developed, I think, later on in the run, not when it first came out. Which, by the way, this character came out all the way in the early 70s.
Yeah,
really.
It's a very long-standing character in the comics. With it, of these different powers that they've got, which powers are you most intrigued by and why?
I mean, I like the concept that his powers are strengthened throughout the lunar cycle. When I read the wiki, at least in the comics, even when there's a new moon, so there's technically no moon, he still has enhanced strength and stuff too, and even in dark places.
But it gets more throughout.
But where he gets
cycle.
crazy strong when there's a full moon, and I like that. It'll change his ability. Maybe one time he comes up against the bad guy and it is a full moon and he's kicking the bad guy's butt, right? But then he comes back to that bad guy and he ambushes him in a new month and he's not able to defend himself.
No, that's a really interesting idea. Which powers do you like the most about this?
The ability to drain the life force, I guess, is interesting, and I'm not sure how that's going to play into this series all that much, but it's definitely one that they could play around with and figure out stuff to do. And of course, that's insanely different than Batman.
Yeah, just a little bit.
As BB Nate wears his Batman shirt.
Yes, of course.
He's a little offended by the fact that we've said Batman without talking about Batman yet. We're going to talk about Batman just a little bit at the end. So, anyway, here's where I get into all of that is all fun with it, but his backstory is really compelling to me. His parents, what's his first name? Marc Spector. Yeah, Marc Spector. His parents were Jews who escaped Nazi persecution and moved to Chicago. They were part of the Holocaust. And even in Chicago, in the period that he was, and I don't know how this is comic driven. Right. I don't think this can be the same because it's set in our modern era. So his parents couldn't have been in the Holocaust. Yeah. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. But as far as the character in the comics goes, they're growing up he's growing up in like the 50s, 60s, Chicago, post-Holocaust, and he's experiencing a lot of anti-Semitism in the storyline. He never understands why his father isn't willing to stand up against those that are coming down on him and treating them the way that they're being treated. And then as a late teenager, Marc actually discovers that a very close family friend that he's known his whole life is actually a Nazi deserter in disguise and is a secret serial killer of the Jewish people. I mean, that's how much he hates the Jewish people in Chicago. And so then Marc has to fight him off. The man escapes. And then this is the event that triggers Marc's dissociative identity disorder. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to talk a lot about that a little bit later. But for now, how do you feel about the Holocaust and all these anti-Semitic storylines that kind of led to that?
It was definitely timely when the character was being made in the 70s. It told a lot of stories and it touched on the subject in the right time period. And it's going to be different, and it's not going to be able to happen in the current times with the series unless they somehow figure a way around that. But I don't think that'll be able to happen. But it's very interesting. It adds depth to the character and it creates this new lens for superheroes that we don't get to see all that often.
Yeah.
Seeing that the origins of that is very interesting.
I like how comics are able to talk about these tough things. It's a medium where you're able to talk about some stuff that you're not able to talk about in other things. But as I was going through the wiki and I saw that, specifically the fact that like this close friend was a Nazi deserter and serial killer of Jews, that was so interesting to me. And the fact that his family is Jewish, I thought I remembered hearing somewhere that in this series his character will be Egyptian. Actually,
yeah, I don't know. Because I'm not familiar with where the series is yet.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to understand the character.
Yes, but I found that super interesting, and another reason why I kind of want to read it.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how that plays out. As we continue kind of into his story here, during his mercenary days, after all of that we just read about, Spector was left to die in a desert. As he dies, he becomes the conduit for the ancient Egyptian moon god named Khonshu. He becomes what's called the Fist of Khonshu and the god's high priest. And then with his new powers, that's how he becomes Moon Knight. It was this masked vigilante who always wears white. And what's cool about this is why he wears white. When he was asked about this in the comics, he says, I don't wear white to hide myself. I wear it so they'll see me coming, so that they'll know who it is. Because when they see the white, it doesn't matter how good a target I am. Their hands shake so bad they couldn't hit the moon. What do you think about that in relation to Batman? And
It's very interesting, and it is very close to Batman. It's kind of the opposite of how Batman acts. Batman really likes the shadows and ambush and fear of just the unknown, but he wants himself to be known. It's honestly a lot more like Batgirl in the way that she approaches bad guys and her suit and how she wants to. She's just like, they'll see me and they'll be scared. And so I'll just kick their butt. That is a quote from Batgirl Year One. So she really, it's a lot more like that. And her costume is very bright and very
so that she can be seen.
Yellow. So she can be seen.
Real quick, since we're not going to talk about it anywhere else in the show, first look at Batgirl costume.
Oh, I loved it. I really do like it
for the TV series. It's a movie or series?
It's a movie.
It's a movie.
Yeah, okay. I'm very excited to see it.
Very cool. What do you think about the wearing white to scare?
Oh man,
so they'll see me coming and I don't care.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When I was reading through the wiki, I got to that quote. I'm like, oh okay, yeah. Now I need to find a way to pick up these comics. Like this is awesome. I love it.
This is where it got interesting for me too, because there's a lot of known MCU connections in the storylines, characters that he interacts with in the Marvel comics regularly, which I thought was really curious when I started seeing these lists. Spider-Man, Thing, who's part of the Fantastic Four, which they're making a Fantastic Four film.
They are.
It's been confirmed. The Defenders. So you've got your Daredevil.
New York. He works in
Chicago, which
we were talking about that the other day, weren't we? We were like, is there a superhero in Chicago? Never mind.
Yeah. And the West Coast Avengers.
Yes.
He actually becomes a part of the Avengers, but he's really interacts a lot with the West Coast Avengers, which at the times that he was a part of that, they consisted a lot of Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, The Vision, Mockingbird, Wasp, and Hank Pym. And then now in the comic runs, the West Coast Avengers have been bringing in Kate Bishop and America Chavez, and then he also interacts a lot with Echo.
There's a lot of connections here.
All of these are already a major part of the MCU Phase 4 or have been speculated to become a part of this. So give me your reaction on this. Is it coincidence? Am I overthinking it? Or is this another brilliant Kevin Feige master plan?
Honestly, I do think that the Disney Plus series is trying to bring in characters to put into other movies or create series for themselves. Like, a great example right now is Daredevil, with everything that is going on with him. We have the high rumors of him being in She-Hulk, which would work. We have Echo with the writers of Daredevil helming that. We have everything with him knowing the Defenders and with Echo. Everything's pointing to them trying to bring him in. And then you have, America Chavez when the West Coast Avengers with her being in Multiverse of Madness. That's opening that door. And then the Thing with Fantastic Four. There's a lot that's happening that is it's not a coincidence that they're bringing this stuff in at all.
Yeah, no, I don't think this is a coincidence. One thing I've thought from the beginning with this character is if they don't find a way to tie it in quickly with the larger MCU, this character will end up feeling like a bit of a Daredevil character.
Like a Netflix series show, because he's not connected.
Right. And so they have to find a way to cement this in the MCU, the movie universe as we know it. Otherwise, it will start to kind of fall away, I think.
And I can't imagine that Oscar Isaac signed on to do this series unless it has bigger implications for the future.
I think he feels very, like, from the stuff I've heard of him in interviews and stuff, he seems very excited to play this character too. And there's a reason that he's excited to play it, because
he's going to do great.
I'm pumped.
He's one of my favorite actors, and so I'm super excited about that. Let's talk a little bit about this dissociative identity disorder. If confusing and convoluted had a name, it would be this character. It would be Marc Spector. In fact, that's just one of the few names that he goes by. He goes by Moon Knight. He goes by this character, Jake Lockley, who's, I think, a cabbie.
I know one of his personalities is a cabbie.
You've got Mr. Knight, he becomes, which is a vigilante version, but he's not as
he's like in a suit and stuff.
But he's not as extreme as Moon Knight. And then you have Stephen Grant. Stephen Grant is super rich, billionaire playboy, which that's another reason I think that there's this Batman connection. He goes at night, Moon Knight, Dark Knight, and
that's fair.
Billionaire playboy type thing. So, but then he also goes by he actually goes by the name of the Egyptian deity Khonshu in the comics as well. And so he's created these versions of himself that allow him access to people and information that he wouldn't otherwise have access to. And that's just how the character works. So it's a little bit confusing. I'm trying to, let's define dissociative identity disorder. Medicine Net defines it as a neuroses in which the personality becomes disassociated into two or more distinct parts, each of which becomes dominant and controls behavior from time to time to the exclusion of the other parts. Okay. So basically what they're saying is Marc Spector has these multiple identities or these personalities, each of which, when in control, sees him act and speak in manners all to themselves. He becomes a different person in that. Very similar to the character in Split.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Played by Kevin. Yeah. And all of the different characters in that.
Exactly.
He takes on different mannerisms, different mindsets, different memories, all of those different types of things. But they don't, when this happens, these characters or these personalities, these identities don't really remember or know of what the others have done.
It's dissociative.
It is. So it's, here's where let's talk about it real briefly. Mental illness is really complicated, and it's a sensitive subplot to this series. Any concerns that it could kind of go off the rails in a bad way?
Of course, there's always risks with doing this, but I also highly appreciate them doing it. It's something they've been doing with the Disney Plus series, at least especially with Hawkeye, bringing in the disability of Hawkeye and his hearing loss, and then Echo and her being completely deaf, and just them touching on that and how difficult it can be at some points. I think seeing that with this, it feels like Marvel's trying to go into the more human route, and they understand that with these shows they have more time to tell the stories of these characters, not in just movies, so they can really dive into that grounded area of the characters. And so I'm excited to see what they do with it, but it is very risky if they don't do it right.
I mean, excuse me, there is always that possibility, but it is also an avenue for them to show the greater audience or the greater community what it's like to be like that. We were watching Daredevil, right? And there's a scene where he goes into his closet, and each one of his hangers has a little tag on it with some braille, so he knows what the clothes look like. And I'm like, that's so interesting to me. I've always wondered, how do blind people know what clothes they're wearing? But you're not going to, if you meet a blind person, inundate them with questions on how they live their life. You just don't do that. But through that show, they're able to do it in a way that's respectful and interesting and informative. And they can do that with this as well. So,
and it's interesting, BB Nate, you talk about Hawkeye and hearing loss and sign language and things, and how a show can impact the real world in such a way that it creates more awareness and interest in it. It's something that you've been dealing with because you love the Hawkeye show. You love the storyline there. You knew about this, and now you're taking ASL as a language class because it created interest and awareness for you in that, and relating to people with hearing loss. Now you want to be able to communicate with them. And so I think that there is positives that can come from it.
There is.
You just got to be really careful with
Absolutely.
this. And that leads to this week's dad moment.
I am your father.
All right. It's important to stop and think about Moon Knight and the history of dissociative identity disorder in the comics. Moon Knight, I think I mentioned this earlier in the segment, it first appeared all the way back in 1972, which makes this character, I know it's scary, but even older than I am with this. And over the past 5 decades, Marc Spector's challenges with mental illness haven't always been portrayed in a very helpful, healthy way. Mental health issues like dissociative identity disorder shouldn't become just plot devices to tell interesting stories. This show could really help audiences see a very different perspective on this. The MCU's version of this character has an opportunity to open up a conversation about mental health in the same way that WandaVision started conversations about grief, and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier started conversations about complex issues of the history of racism in the U.S. and all of those different types of things. The point I'm trying to make in this is that there is a much greater story to be told in this series. I just really want them to do it the right way. Yeah. I'm confident that they will with it. All right. Well, unless something really earth-shattering is announced in the next week, we are going to have more Moon Knight conversation on next Tuesday's show, as we will break down the first full trailer. And after learning more about this character, I'm excited to see what we get. Yeah.
Good segment.
Thanks.
Very good segment.
All right. We got some movie stuff coming, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. January is sort of the month of the year where new film releases kind of go to die. Not much happening this weekend in the movies, but the new release that is coming, I'm actually really interested in. I'll explain why. It's based largely on a book that is most of the time unread in the Old Testament. And we're going to talk a lot about that on this week's Movie Moments.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
So the new release this week, only one, is Redeeming Love. The description is based on the international bestseller by Francine Rivers. Redeeming Love is a powerful and contemporary retelling of the biblical book of Hosea. Set against the romantic backdrop of the California gold rush of 1850. Angel expects only pain from those around her, sold into prostitution as a child. Angel survives with hatred towards herself and the men that use her. She meets Michael Hosea, a farmer who believes God wants Angel to be his wife. Dire circumstances force Angel to accept his proposal, but when Michael defies her bitter expectations, her frozen heart begins to thaw. As Angel encounters a love unlike anything she's ever experienced, feelings of unworthiness and shame cause her to run from a life she doesn't think she deserves. As Michael sets out to find her, Angel discovers there is no brokenness that love can't heal. Wow. Interesting. The director is DJ Caruso. The cast is Abigail Cohen, Tom Lewis, and Famke Janssen. I think I got that right.
I think you did too.
Studio is Universal, and the MPA rating is PG-13 for mature thematic content, sexual content, partial nudity, and strong violent content. Dad, you posed interest in this in the intro.
Yeah, I'm curious about it. It's a novel that came out 30 plus years ago. And it was one of the biggest novels of its time when it came out, like in the Christian world. People talked a lot about it, and lots of people read it. And Francine Rivers, she's become a huge Christian author since then. And so I'm curious about how they do this. I hesitate when you take a story of such beauty and significance as the Hebrew scriptures book of Hosea, and you just slap that into a modern romance. Let's take Hallmark.
Sort of modern.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying though. Type story. I worry about that, but I'm curious about if it does communicate the heart of that book very well. So
yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Not sure if we're going to see it or not. I mean, I wouldn't see it with the partial nudity thing. I've been trying to figure out if there's actually nudity in this or if it's like some guy's bum or whatever.
Right.
You know, because there's like Chariots of Fire nudity and then there's like nudity. And so I'm trying to figure out which that is on this.
Okay. For movie trailers this week, Liam Neeson is back at it again with every single formula he has done for movies for years with Blacklight. Now, this one actually seemed fun. Now, every Liam Neeson movie is the same every time. But this one...
You've taken my family.
Exactly. But this one seems interesting.
I'm going to hunt you down.
He gives me the FBI agent he is. Gives me the vibes of Nobody. His character, you know, the one that'll go in and take care of the people that needs to be taken care of. The fixer.
Yep.
But then they throw in Taken within it. And that's really the plot of this movie. It's Taken and Nobody, but it's Liam Neeson. And every Liam Neeson movie is the exact same.
I'd see it. It's one of those that because we have AMC Stubbs A-list, if we have nothing happening on the weekend and we haven't used all three of ours, which is often the case, we've got one left over, we'll be like, let's go to a movie and see this one. Yeah. I would see this movie.
Yeah.
So
same. Box office projections.
No, this is numbers. I'm sorry, I didn't change
numbers.
That.
All right. Well, box office and numbers. Scream got 30 million. Good for Scream. And Spider-Man No Way Home is for the first time in second place this week since its release with 20 million, 700 million domestic.
Yep.
And Sing 2 got 8 million, 119 million domestic. So not terrible. Good job, Sing 2, for staying at third place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the movie news.
Yeah,
not a lot happening.
Not a lot happening this week, and we don't have Morbius this month, so not much will be happening this month.
Oh yeah, that got moved.
Yes,
to April or May.
April.
Yeah, I believe it's April
1st, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's me again. So Superman and Lois season 2. We finally got the first episode of season 2, and it lived up to my expectations.
Yay!
So let's talk about some of my favorite moments and some surprises from it.
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Yeah, I can fly.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
The people in this room, which one is A, wearing a spangly outfit, and B, not of use?
There's only one God, man, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
That man has no limits.
Season 3 has been much better, definitely, than of The Flash. We're talking about The Flash, just by the way, those of you who are just, as we get into this segment, we just
should probably provide context.
Yeah, BB Nate and I have been binge watching The Flash at times, and season 3 is a whole lot better.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm trudging my way through this season.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what happens next, which is unusual. But since I can't ask Sammy this question because he decided that he isn't going to watch Superman and Lois. I don't know why.
You could just stand over there.
Hasn't had the time. But Dad, rating of 1 to 10 Supermen of America for this episode. Yeah, I had to.
You know, this is, you're going to think that I didn't like this episode,
I know.
but it's like 6.5 or 7. It was, let's reestablish the universe. Let's reestablish where the characters are. I don't like some of the stuff that happened between Jordan and Sam. Is that her name?
Sarah?
Sarah. That's her name. Sam is in Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I just thought that was weird. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with that.
I'm sure we'll learn at some point.
I thought for a second that they were going to like set up this affair between Lana Lang and Clark.
What?
It looked like I thought they were going down like this emotional affair type thing is getting ready to start, and so
no, I did not get that.
And then it changed, and so I was glad, but that threw me off for a bit. So,
yeah, well,
anyway.
that kind of leads into this. The episode didn't really move the story forwards all that much, but it definitely still felt like Superman and Lois to me, which is something I was worried about. I thought they were going to CW-ify it, and it was going to be, not good again. But Dad, what were some things in this episode that did work for you? And what were some that didn't?
I loved the kind of seeing the emotional weight of Natalie on Lois and on Natalie, and Lois vice versa on Natalie, and how there was that weight of Natalie seeing Lois and thinking that was her mother, and then immediately it not being her real mom. It's this other multiversal weird thing that happens in these things. And then I really did like the fact that Lois is trying to hold this all in, and she's struggling with trying to reconcile the fact that she doesn't feel anything.
Yeah.
When she sees Natalie. And so it's this guilt of Natalie's lost her mother, and I should be her mother, step into that role.
Yeah.
And I don't feel anything when I see her. And it triggered her to emotions when she was younger and things. And so there's a lot of emotional content in this.
That's something the show has really done well.
I've heard that's kind of cool that they actually are really diving into the character of Lois. I know it's Superman and Lois, but not a lot of series do that. They just focus on Superman. So that's cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Lois character is just as much front and center in this series.
That's cool. I appreciate that.
And it's great, and they really do develop the family dynamic on this one a lot. So yeah, I that was something I really appreciated about it. I have questions about the Superman stuff in this episode. And so I'm trying to, I know that there's things that have happened in the comics that happened in this series or in this episode, sort of. And so that's throwing me off a little bit. So I'll let you lead the conversation.
But here are a few moments, so 3 that really worked for me in this episode. Kind of just my favorite parts of this. Now to start off, a little happy. Dad Clark is back, and somehow his comedic timing is better than ever. One of my favorite parts of season 1 was Clark and him being a dad and showing all of that, and it gave us some great laughs, and that doesn't look like it'll slow down anytime soon. Now, Dad, the comedy in this show feels very different from the other CW shows like The Flash. Now, why do you think that is?
Because the comedy is rooted in the characters versus the comedy being rooted in comic relief.
Yeah.
I'll use Cisco from the Flash series. Cisco is a lot of times the comic relief, and it's most of the time campy and cheesy and doesn't fit. Or, it's slapsticky to some extent, and over the top. The humor, the comedy in this is the characters are funny characters. You've got funny moments that actually could really happen in the real world, or that if Superman was real, you could see this really happening, and it's not extreme and silly.
Yeah, I'm sure having Superman being a dad provides its own challenges and interesting scenarios. I mean, you don't need a ladder. Your dad's not going to fall off a ladder while he's changing a light bulb because he's Superman. He can just fly up there and stuff like that. So
yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to see more of Dad Clark. And yeah, I love that. But now this one's might ruffle some feathers, but Superman's allegiance to the world and not America. Now, I do think it's more like Superman to protect the whole world and not just America. Heck, he's a hero for everyone. That's been made very clear in a lot of the comics recently and in the past. And I love the conversation between Superman and Mitchell Anderson at the end of the episode, talking about the Supermen of America. Mitchell Anderson's like, I asked you to give your allegiance to America. And he's like, well, I gave it to the world a long time ago. It shows the fact that that's who Superman is. It's what all of his parents would have wanted, even his dad on Krypton, his mom on Krypton, and Jonathan and Martha. Especially Jonathan. Clark's father would want him to protect and serve everyone because that is who he is and what he believed in. Now, that part really worked for me, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with it. Now, Dad, what do you think of this whole thing?
This is interesting because... truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah.
Right. And they made a big deal at Fandom this year about how Superman going forward isn't truth, justice, and American way. What is it now?
It's truth, justice, and a better tomorrow.
A better tomorrow. Okay. And I know that that's controversial and all of this. I'm going to take this into a left field that nobody sees coming with this. The character of Superman is built, and I remember on the episode a couple Fridays ago with Brian Godawa, where we were talking about Superman, he talked about this. It was a messianic character when it was originally created.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
It's Jesus.
Man of Steel covers that
Man of Steel
lot.
does.
It does.
Zack Snyder talked about that too.
It does. Both and Superman Returns.
Yeah.
Talks, even that weird one, the Brandon Routh. It has a lot of those elements in it. And, Kal-El is his name, right? And Jor-El is his dad. El is the Hebrew word for God. I mean, it's all of this type of stuff. I want to say I kind of like this because it opens up a conversation that I think that Christianity in America needs to have. And that is not Jesus isn't an American Jesus.
No, he's not the white guy with the blue eyes and the long blonde hair.
And just because someone holds a Bible in their hands, says they're a Christian, and says we're America and God is on our side, doesn't make it true with it.
I think we've got that in our heads because our country was founded on Christian beliefs, and I don't know how many other countries were done with that in mind. I'm not a geography or history buff, so I couldn't say for certain, but I know that is unique to our country. So I think that, plus we're Americans, so we think the world revolves around us. So we've gotten that over the years in our head.
There are churches and I know people in those churches that celebrate Americanism more than they celebrate Christ. And they worship at the feet of the American flag is what it feels like. And just because somebody says that they're American and they love our country and they're a Christian doesn't mean that they're right. And I'm kind of tired of the political forces in this country taking over, trying to manipulate the population through Christianity and faith. And so I like the idea. I kind of like the idea. When you said the phrase, I'd never even thought about this until you said the phrase, I gave my allegiance with what Clark said, or Superman says, I gave my allegiance to the world a long time ago. Yeah. God, John 3:16 doesn't say, for God so loved the United States of America.
Or even Israel.
Or Israel, right? That's like the foundational premise of the New Testament scriptures is that the kingdom of God advances to the world and that Jesus was a savior for the world and not a specific nation or people group. And so I love that because that allows that conversation to take place. And if nothing else, we got to have that conversation on this show. So I'm cool with it.
Exactly.
Can I peel back the curtain a little bit on the conversation? Nathan, we were writing our notes this morning before lunch, and Nathan was texting me, and he was like, I'm a little worried about writing this in my segment. He's like, I kind of like the fact that Superman is for the whole world. And he's like, and I don't think Dad's going to like that. And I'm nervous about that. I'm like, dude, you need to talk about that. The whole point of our podcast is so we can have different opinions. It opens up interesting discussion. So when you're like, I'm going to go way in the left field here. And you were like, I like it. And I just kind of gave Nathan this look. I'm like, all righty then.
That's funny.
I've never been a fan of Superman being strictly for America because
even Captain America fights for the whole world.
Exactly.
Right.
Because that's what superheroes are. But we got to do this. Of course, the big reveal at the end, Doomsday is in this show now.
That's literally what I said.
Which
like
means
what I wanted.
Death of Superman, most likely. Now, Dad, are you nervous about this storyline being adapted and how it's going to play out?
I am. I'm really nervous about this.
This was like your storyline.
This is my Superman. This is my Luke Skywalker moment, my Boba Fett moment, all of that kind of stuff, right? My Batman moment. This is a big deal for me. That I loved the death, the rain, and the death, the rise, and the rain. Is that what it is?
It's just death and the rain.
Okay. I thought there was a third one in there somewhere. Anyway, my mind has it going.
I kind of thought there was 3 too.
Yeah.
So.
I love that series, and I did not like Doomsday in Batman v Superman.
Nobody did. I didn't either. It felt very off. I enjoyed what it did and what it set up for the rest of the series, but it just did not feel like Doomsday. It felt very rushed.
My hope is that this Oh man, and the emotional weight
with his
of Doomsday with us having spent, season 1 and we're going to spend season 2 deepening our relationships with Jordan and with Jonathan and more of a relationship with Lois, and for him to go through what he goes through in that comics and what happens at the end of it. I mean, I'm emotional right now thinking about that. So, please do it right. Please do it right.
And we already have Steel. With John Henry Irons.
So do we get the other characters if there's a
with
clone one and stuff?
There's
a clone and a cyberboy.
That's Superboy. That's Lex Luthor's whole deal. And it was rumored that Lex Luthor might be.
And what does this have to do with the Superman of America?
Explain the Supermen of America, they were a group that was actually created by Lex Luthor, given powers, specific ones. Now, Mitchell Anderson, the DOD guy, is actually part of the Superman of America in the comics. He has magnetism powers. I forget his name in the actual comic, but he's kind of the head of it. So them bringing in Mitchell Anderson and all this stuff, and he was at the kind of the main head of Superman and Lois, was asked about this. You're like, is that a coincidence? You're bringing in the Superman of America, you're bringing in Mitchell Anderson, you're bringing in Doomsday and all this stuff. Is this just all a coincidence, or are you planning something? He's like, this is not a coincidence. We've had this set up for forever, and it's kind of XYZ. We know what we're doing with this.
I hope so, because it sounds interesting.
Cool. And so, yeah.
All right, Sam, how are you feeling about this? You wishing you could go back and watch now?
I mean, I don't know. For some reason there's still. I just need more for me. But
we're gonna end up spoiling the whole show before you.
Yeah, that's true.
But we are getting a bigger tease and a bigger little bit more of the curtain pulled back for Doomsday in the second episode, and then a full reveal
in the third
episode of Doomsday. But it was also told. I was reading an interview with that guy after the first episode. He had an interview, and he was talking about, we're going to be having multiple villains throughout this whole season. He's like, Doomsday is kind of the big one, and each one might not seem like they connect to Doomsday, but in the end, all of them will. So that's very exciting, and I'm so happy that this show is living up to the first season so far, and I cannot wait for more. So make sure to tune in, tonight for when you're listening to this.
Right.
Tomorrow night for the second episode at 8 p.m. Eastern on the CW network.
Awesome. All right. Good job, BB Nate.
Good job.
You didn't have anything to be scared about. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Anything else?
So, official Japanese Marvel site may have confirmed 4 Disney Plus shows in the summer of 2022.
The release of them. Okay.
Yeah. She-Hulk.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I Am Groot. What If Season 2.
Wow.
And Ms. Marvel.
All right.
They're really trying to get out What If surprisingly fast.
Yeah, that one was the big surprise. I think we kind of all thought the others were coming that soon.
I think we're definitely getting something with Multiverse of Madness, and the fact that they're wanting to release season 2 so fast,
hopefully,
is telling. But the Batman has a confirmed runtime of 2 hours and 55 minutes. Woo!
How you doing?
How long was Endgame?
3 hours.
So this is about as long as Endgame.
About as long as Endgame, and it is the introduction of this Batman, not the culmination of 22 movies. And so I'm excited that they're taking this.
Is it too much?
No, you don't go. There's so much they have to do, and if it is 3 hours long, we have not seen anything in the trailers.
Yeah. You think that this means definite Court of Owls stuff? That's a lot of time.
Very well could be. And the fact that the Court of Owls has such deep lore and so much complicated history, they'll have to take a lot of time to explain what they are.
It's definitely exciting. Yeah. You guys may have seen that leaked Knights of Ren series trailer. It's probably fake, but it's still pretty cool.
It was a really cool trailer. If it was real, I would be very excited for it. And honestly, that's a lot of work put into a fake trailer. Yeah. It was very well done.
It looked fake. You okay, BB Samuel?
I've just got this tickle, man.
Ready to be done with the show?
I mean, it would help to talk less, but I don't want to.
Well, since we're done.
Oh, that's good. Okay, we're good.
That. Hey, make sure you tune in on Friday. Mr. Fantatrax himself, Marc Newbold. He has been covering Star Wars for a long time.
So are you going to do a British accent while you interview him just so you fit in?
No, because that would be rude and embarrassing at the same time.
Kind of offensive.
It would be a little bit, yeah. Cufflinks.com. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for listening to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast.
If you had a good time listening, it would be awesome if you could share this with your friends. Yeah, and of course the show, it's only a small part of the Tatooine Sons world, so be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter to get in on all the action and keep up to date with everything we got going on at TatooineSons.com.
That's right. Don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss our next episode, and give us a review, please, on Apple and Spotify or Podchaser.com or whatever other podcast app that you prefer. That's going to pretty much do it for this week. Anything else you guys like to say?
May the Force be with you. May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you, always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Join, please.